So this is the test edition timed at 0800 GMT on Tuesday, the 21st of July 2020. And we have started with the images of some of the front pages from Fleet Street on Shamima Begum being allowed to return to the UK in a ruling by the Court of Appeal. The ruling is not about Shamima Begum's being successful in overturning Sajid Javid's decision while he was Home Secretary to scrap Shamima Begum's British by birth citizenship. This ruling by the Court of Appeal is about her right to enter the UK to personally take part in her appeal against that decision. So the newspapers, except the headline in the Times, are absolutely dishonest and wrong to say that she has been allowed to come and that's it. I mean, she's a terror suspect or terrorist, jihadi bride, and she has been allowed to come in. That has not been the case. It is just a procedural stage. And even so, even at this stage, the Court of Appeal ruling may be overturned by the Superior Court, the Supreme Court. And it is most likely that Boris Johnson fronted cabal in occupation and number 10 Downing Street will challenge. Even if he doesn't challenge, he has already undermined the constitution of this country, whatever remains of the constitution or constitutionality, by condemning the decision as perverse. And not only that, he has also threatened to scrap what remains of the so-called legal aid provision, the legal aid that is available to the licensed lawyers or law traders appearing before courts and tribunals in this country on behalf of clients that are not multi-billionaires or multi-millionaires and cannot afford the hefty charge that licensed law traders charge. Now, one example has been, of course, an exceptional news item involving David Panic. The panic of the anti-Brexiteer notoriety. Panic is also the same person who advocated for the peer, his co-peer, co-member of the House of so-called Lords, and who was accused of having offered an Indian descended woman or an Indian origin person a peerage if she slept with him. Now, David Pennick, therefore, has not got an impeccable moral background. However, that doesn't stop him charging £20,000 for 1 day's retention of his quote services. So David Pennick is an exceptional, of course, in terms of the notoriety and even in terms of the amount of money that he can charge, but he is not far ahead of the many other QCs, that is, barristers that are listed as silks, which gives them an extra advantage in negotiating all sorts of deals, mainly lucrative fees for themselves and access to the inner sanctums of the very corrupt legal system in this country. And the corruption is, of course, exposed in the prevalence of the silk and other distortions of what should be straightforward skills, knowledge, objectivity, ability, fairness, independence, integrity based qualification, not based on secretive. I became a barrister almost, and I was stopped by the racists at the time because they objected to my being too articulate and too vocal and too vociferous in my arguments. So that was me versus the Lincoln's Inn in the 1970s. They stopped me from being a barrister. I had everything. I had recommendations, which is how they enrolled barristers in those days. I had recommendations from at least three practicing barristers, and they were overturned secretly by a racist clique in place as administration personnel in the Lincoln's Inn. So the corruption is one of the most important things that our campaign is actually focusing on and is leading the call for ending in the legal system. Legal system is corrupt. The legal education so-called system is corrupt. And when I went to what is now the University of Law, it was the College of Law in the 70s. I went to the College of Law when it was in the Breams building, just off Chancery Lane, which is not far from the building of the Courts of Justice. Amazingly, it's called Courts of Justice, but it's not Courts of Justice at all. Courts of Justice at a price, and the higher the payment by the litigant, the better the chance of getting redress or remedies. But there it is, still the name is the Royal Courts of Justice. It should be Royal Courts of Law. And this will be something that I will be pursuing in direct, updated communications with the ministry and the relevant MPs or whatever, for what it's worth. But the point is made. And this is why I started with the images of Shamima Begum, because the Sun newspaper and of course others, including Boris Johnson and his inner circle, have condemned Keir Starmer for having supported Shamima Begum's legal stage. They're calling it victory, but it's not a victory at all. It's just a legal process allowing the person who is affected by the ban to appear in person in the courts while her appeal is heard or pursued. And as I said, Boris Johnson has actually threatened to scrap the legal aid system because that is how she got the legal representation in the procedures. And I have long argued the legal aid system is itself corrupt. It's antithetical to the idea of access to remedies through the legal system. And this goes back to the 1970s when I had to battle on behalf of my parents and about a case involving the Tar Owners Council. a firm of solicitors, which I think is defunct now and has been, its then members who are still alive may have decanted to other firms or practices, including perhaps some as sole cheaters, solicitors, cheaters. Now, that ghastly firm of sole solicitors in collection was named after one of the founding partners called Garston, ghastly Garstons. And they were based not far from the off Oxford Street. And the experience I had of having to prepare my family's case against our Armless Council, the case had begun, the harassment by the council had begun in the 1960s. So I took over the actual legal preparation, but not as a practicing lawyer because I had no audience, but I could have been if I had not been prevented by the racists and the Lincoln Inn. Now, the preparation was completely, absolutely, literally perverted by a man who was in post in that ghastly farm as a de facto, in these today's terms, legal executive. And he was making any number of appointments for myself and my father to attend briefings. I think we attended about 12 briefings before the matter was the subject of a conference, which is that it was discussed between the potential barrister, licensed barrister, and the solicitors, with us being present. In those 12 or so appointments, this so-called legal executive who lived in Hackney, he may have died, and I don't want to name him because if in case his surviving family may feel distressed. He was an absolutely practiced liar. He made excuses to interview us and ask questions over and over again about a set of facts that could not be altered and did not alter over any of the relevant time. But he kept making appointments and kept changing he was dictating. He asked questions and then dictated it in front of us in a showy way as if he was doing something important. He was doing no such thing. He was lying, and this was a lying performance, serial lying performance by a solicitor staff in the Garston, ghastly solicitors firm called Garston. Let them come forward and deny what I am claiming. And this is only a summary. Now, by the time we went to have a conference with the barrister readily agreed with me, whatever I said. And that showed the parity of knowledge that I had already demonstrated. But that cannot be uh, denied only because Lincoln Inn stopped me in 1973 from getting the formal paper allowing me to practice as a barrister. Now, I think that Keir Starmer has been accused in a way that helps his image as cause supporter, a cause supporter based on ethics and morality. Now, that is deliberately promoting or actually shoring him up by the right wing, by the racists, by the anti Muslims, because Keir Starmer, if anything, is not an opponent of racism, as his denunciation in a forensic language of the Black Lives Matter movement as a mere moment exposed him as. So therefore, Keir Starmer being accused by the Sun, the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, Boris Graf, and Boris Johnson himself and the other assorted malcontents that dominate the Conservative Party, that by expressing approval of the Court of Appeal ruling, allowing this Shamima Begum to come back to the UK to pursue her appeal against the removal of our citizenship as a British citizen is a deliberate con. And Keir Starmer has fallen. He began his career as a professional barrister by pretending to be not charging any money from the two defendants that had been sued by McDonald's in the McLivel case that went on for many years. But Keir Starmer, his CV actually is enriched by this misleading claim that he actually helped them. If he helped them, he didn't help them for long enough. He withdrew and disappeared and left them to rot in the struggle and the nightmare that they endured, the two of them, against the very highly expensively paid set of briefs, dozens of briefs that McDonald, the multi-billion pound conglomerate, had hired and could hire. And the court system, being the court system, actually gave these two defendants hell. And I'm not going to give the chapter and verse because it's very long and very long and very long. But the bottom line is Keir Starmer is a stuntman. He is not Calvin Klein brief, but he is a stuntman who has got a career made based on serial stunts as a man with a conscience, as he demonstrated just before Jeremy Corbyn officially removed himself from the post of leader of the Labour Party. Keir Starmer actually exhibited his care and concern for his mother and the horses that he, or the mules that he bought for her. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. This man is not at all what his spin is making him appear to be. And this is lethal and dangerous because whatever he has said originally about the ruling is not for Shamima Begum, most certainly not for Jihadi Bride, not for extremists, nothing of the sort. And we were not expecting him to say any of that. We are not supporters of any terror, ideology, or brainwashing, or any agenda. What we are saying is the fact. What is the fact of Keir Starmer's inevitable expression of some kind of opinion after the Court of Appeal granted her the permission? This was safe. I mean, Keir Starmer was not risking anything. He could say anything, and the ruling of the Court of Appeal, until it got overturned, would stay the same, unaffected by anything Keir Starmer said. He didn't anticipate, he did not intervene ahead of the ruling or the actual proceedings before the Court of Appeal. So it shows the gap, the deep gap that exists in Fleet Street and among the newspapers as to what they report. And this gap is actually exploited by the corrupt system in the legal system, which, as I said earlier in the previous broadcast, is contaminated by the presence of people who dominate this profession or this system, like David Neuberger. Neuberger, as a just recently retired president of the Supreme Court, was too easy to be lured into the trap of propaganda that was confected by the regime that was fronted by Theresa May. And it was operated in that context by the then Justice Minister, David Lidington. Lidington successfully exhibited Neuberger as a propagandist for the London-based law market. That is what you're saying. You're saying that once Brexit is done, Brexit may never be done because it is so stupid. Once Brexit is done, London would become the most important, most profitable business place for legal litigation from the world. You know, all the billionaires and oligarchs and other crooks and robbers and looters of their countries would congregate and fast track to London and exploit the corruption market under the banner of the British legal system. So we leave it there, and this is on the record. And this video, although it is branded test broadcast, it is absolutely, fully, legally protected by all the rights, authorship, and copyright and everything else. And anyone who copies it or uses it or parts of it must expressly mention the source, which is this program, which is called KhoodeelaarTV channel, editor Muhammad Haq, and the date and time and everything must be clearly, legibly, accessibly acknowledged and expressed. So we are introducing some other feature in this bulletin, daily bulletins. One is the headlines. So we have done the main headline about Shamima Begum, the legal system, the corrupt legal system, and my update on the Lincoln's Inn corruption and how the crooks and the racists stopped me from becoming license holder or carrier of a license as a barrister in 1973. So what we are going to do next is to talk about Crossrail, which is where the Khoodeelaar campaign began in 2003, in December 2003, with myself proposing it and K. Jordan backing me up to the very last minute when we forced the actual retreat by the proponents of the hole in Brick Lane, the Crossrail hole. And the implications are still being absolutely actively pursued and affected and felt. And I am able to confirm that the agenda was not only the whole, but also the rest of the community to degenerate into actually disperse and to destroy and disenfranchise the local community by big business for big business. And this agenda is being pursued by the big business interests with the collusion of the local council, Tower Hamlets Council, which has been giving hundreds, literally hundreds of planning permission for high-rise buildings, buildings that are inconsistent with the needs of the local community, housing needs, community needs, environmental needs, social estate needs, and location needs, and education needs, and all the rest of it. And the council is not being held to account for this collusion and complicity and service to the big business agenda and the servile role that the council bureaucracy has been playing. And the elected councillors are nothing but elected concealers of their duties and the truth, or of the truth. So we have got big buildings, and the big buildings are out of control, contrary to the impression that has been created by and completely by accident, I am sure, by the tussle between Tower Hamlets Council and the pornographic billionaire, Dirty Desmond, over his application to be given planning permission for making hundreds of millions of pounds of money by constructing in the West Ferry Printworks complex a whole range of homes that are beyond the imagination or the ability to count of most people in ordinary Tower Hamlets, ordinary population, ordinary demography in Tower Hamlets. Now, Tower Hamlets remains a complicit local authority, complicit with the big business, the biggest agencies of big business operating anywhere in any single borough in the UK at the present time. And I would say in any corresponding sized parts of any big city anywhere in Western Europe or in fact in the West, except a part of New York where last year, I think that, or in the last 18 months, the owner of Amazon conglomerate, Jeff Bezos, was defeated by local outrage and persistent and sustained campaigning against his being given by the so-called Democratic mayor in New York the advantage or the equivalent benefit or similar comparable type of benefit that Robert Jenrick has given to the pornographic multi-billionaire Dirty Desmond in the West Ferry Road printworks. And yesterday, Monday, I said in the bulletin, 15:30 GMT bulletin, about the latest embroiling of Robert Jenrick in a similar, in terms of principle, not in terms of the size of the money involved, but similar abuse of his position over granting a planning permission to another builder, degenerator, house builders, that is not a house builder for social housing or council housing, but antisocial housing for the rich in somewhere in Kent, probably in an area called Sittingbourne. But as I said yesterday, we can check and we can see the actual name of the main area where it is located. But the principle is that he has abused his position. The principle of the story is that he has abused his position and granted planning permission by exercising his powers in a wrong way. It's a malefied. And he had already conceded under pressure of opposition that the West Ferry Road planning permission that he had given by overturning or ignoring the so-called inspector's advice was actually wrong. So the decision had been reversed, if you like, or has been kind of invalidated, and it is not the end of the story, and we'll be updating on the developing or the moving states of the story about West Ferry printworks and the abuse of power by the corrupted, bribed Robert Jenrick, bribed either personally or bribed as a member of parliament for the Conservative Party, who was the Secretary of State for Housing and Communities or Local Government. It keeps being changed. And so, therefore, it's very difficult to keep up with the changed name with any reliability. Just like Robert Jenrick is unreliable, his predecessor, main predecessor that had any involvement in the featured news about Tower Hamlets was Eric Pickles. I call him Eric the Pickles or the Eric Pickles, whatever the Pickles. The main focus is on his being a pickle. He is absolutely as unreliable, as partisan, as unfair, as biased against the ordinary communities as Jenrick has shown himself to be. But instead of being penalized or instead of being made an example of for bad behavior in office, Eric Pickles was rewarded in a serial kind of granting of honors and positions after he stopped being an MP or he lost his interest in being an MP or whatever it was. He became promoted by the mistake, by the abuse, by the bias, by the unfairness. And so Robert Jenrick is as bad, if not worse, than Eric Pickles. And what we have in Tower Hamlets is that regardless of how bad the conservative Secretary of State for local government or housing is, or communities is, the Tower Hamlets Council is so undemocratic, so unethically operated, that no matter how bad those conservative Secretary of State office holders serially, successively have been, Tower Hamlets Council cannot get the moral upper ground. Even in this case about the Dirty Desmond, where bribery is clearly involved, Tower Hamlets Council has not made any serious step, principled stand. It has, as I said, the councillors get elected by default. Most of the Bangladeshi councillors in Tower Hamlets get elected by default, and Tower Hamlets Council's position as a kind of morally less contaminated than Robert Jenrick in this case has been allowed to remain so or appear to be so by default because of the fact that the bribery and the corruption and the actual evidence of abuse became so overwhelming that the image of Gendrick and his government and his party and of Desmond could not be disguised as being anything other than contaminated and bad and corrupt. That is not in any way a proof that the Tower Hamlets Council is not corrupt or is democratic or accountable or not contaminated. And we have been talking about Robert Vendrick, who is also responsible for council's other duties. For example, the duties that the council owe to the local communities and local voters, local residents, about maintaining a rigorous regime of strict building control so that building constructions are done safely, not by threatening or endangering the lives of anyone in the area. And yet, this has happened 3 times now in the last 5 years. One child, 5 years, just before her fifth birthday, was killed by an insecure, unsafely maintained branch of a tree in the Myland Park where she was playing, not far from her mother. So she died, crushed by the branch of the tree or the plant of the tree or the piece of big wood that fell on her right in front of her absolutely horrified mother. Now that you cannot expect that to ever leave her mother. Her mother's life is finished after witnessing that. As if that was not bad enough, for years she has been fighting for Tower Hamlets Council to admit liability or admit that it did wrong and it neglected its duties. She has not got that. As far as we know, she has not got that. If she has got that in between our making this broadcast and the last time that we actually saw anything about this, her battle, and if she has got any kind of apology or damages or regret or whatever, which will not amount to even 1 minute's what length of her life, her child's life, because she will not come back, this child. We shall correct any factual development of factual difference if there has been any. We suspect there hasn't been, but if there has been, we shall correct that in subsequent bulletins and broadcasts. Now, that was not the last tragedy. A mother, a young mother, 30, in her 30s, after leaving her child in the primary school in the Burdett Road area, was killed by falling bricks from a building under construction. And that building under construction was a building being constructed for non-social, if you like, antisocial, non-social kind of users by a company. Company not far different from the company called Swan Housing, which was responsible for the next tragedy that could have been avoided. That happened on the 7th of this month, July, 7th of July, in Watts Grove, which is not far from Burdett Road. It is in the vicinity of Mile End, in the Mile End station. And so there were all these three incidents happen near or around or not far from Mile End. Now, this tragedy by Swan Housing was by crane collapsing on top of a terraced house in the Watts Grove area, instantly killing 85-year-old June Harvey, a highly respected, very well-known local person, and narrowly escaping her niece, Jacqueline Atkinson, and Atkinson's son, Sam Atkinson, 28, and Jacqueline Atkinson was 63, and June Harvey was 85. Now, this kind of collapse is predictable. So, the first thing that a local building regulation authority must do before giving permission for any construction is to make it rock solid that no such thing happens. As rock solid as physically, materially possible. And so they didn't actually do that. And the statements that have been issued since then, this is now 2 weeks since we called it the murder of John Harvey. Some people may disagree, but we are saying that because there were a lot of, it is quite possible that they couldn't care less about the safety of passers-by or people in the nearby buildings. This was something that the council was expected to actually comment on, but it did not comment on. It fended off likely criticism of its failure, as did the local newly elected Member of Parliament, Afsana Begum. Her main statement, as reported by the Communist Party Morning Star, was that she was expressing her determination, words to that effect, that she would work on this with the trade unions. Now, the trade unions, by definition, are unions of staff that work for the council or an employer. What was the trade unions to do with that? Because the trade unions presumably were concerned about the safety or lack of safety of these kind of buildings or any kind of buildings in the area. But they have not shown any evidence that they are concerned about this death of Miss Harvey. So, what was Afsana Begum's purpose in going on about the trade unions and her links with the trade unions? This is a kind of shoddy connection with a kind of stock name, trade unions. Sounds quite interesting. As John McDonnell's expression of endorsement for Afsana Begum as a candidate was, he said that she represented the grassroots communities or community in Tower Hamlets. She did not. She did no such thing. So therefore, these people are absolutely fake. What they are doing is not really delivering democratic, accountable representation to the electors or the communities. In the case of John McDonnell, coming from West London, far West London, and endorsing Afsana Begum in those terms, which must have been invented for him because they were not founded on the facts on the ground, show that the Labour Party, even when fronted by Jeremy Corbyn, I don't say led that often because it is fronted by Jeremy Corbyn, who was fated as at least 1 year, he was fated as a very popular politician, congratulated by people in a pop festival, where it is rarely a politician who is given congratulatory reception. So the point is that his being a popular image and radical image, left-wing image, etc., did not represent democracy, did not represent the poor people, did not represent the people victimized by the lack of democracy in Towners Council or similar councils. So, when he yesterday took part in a online kind of display of support for the NHS, our NHS, as against the Conservatives' bill to sell off what remains of the NHS to the big American conglomerates and similar conglomerates coming from anywhere else. It was absolutely typical Jeremy Corbyn, all slogan and no real substance. And I'm not going to go into the details of every single example that shows that he has no substance politically, except to say that Jeremy Corbyn is more vocal about our NHS than he is anywhere near as vocal about opposing racism. Now, that includes his absence of stance in the media, in the public eye, in the public forum, in the public domain about his alleged support or approval for anti-Semites in the Labour Party ranks. So what I'm saying to Keir Starmer, as I said yesterday, is that he has to stop that racist tradition of racist radicals in post of leaders of Labour Party and start systematic admission that the Labour Party has been racist and nothing but racist, and it must be stopped from being racist. And I'm saying this because no matter what number of Asian, mainly Pakistani Muslim MPs from the Labour Party keep pointing at the Conservative Party being, wrongly they say that word, Islamophobic, the Labour Party is as anti-Muslim as the Conservative Party. That is what I'm saying. I'm saying to the both parties, and I'm saying it in public. Evidence shows that. So when this building collapses, Afsana Begum comes up with a completely false, fake, unrepresentative, out of contact with the local grassroots statement that must have been scripted for her by the trade unions or their acolytes or their stooges. So we said to the newly elected MP for Limehouse and Popular Limehouse, Afsana Begum, stop being fake and stop disrespecting people. I encouraged a man called Maniruddin, who was a Labour Party member, to become a candidate, Labour Party candidate. He had never mentioned any intention of standing as a council candidate for the Labour Party until I told him. I told him in no uncertain terms. I said, stop moaning about the racists and get to become a councillor and see what you can do differently. Of course, that is a long story what he did differently. Of course, he became a mayor in circulation, I mean, in cycle, because there are limited number of councillors and one has to become a ceremonial mayor or speaker inevitably. So he became a speaker once or twice. Now, that man and what he did is important in this commentary because he was Afsana Begum's father. I didn't know Afsana Begum. I still don't know her personally, but I knew him and I advised him and I gave him the benefit of my knowledge and my understanding and my insights over the long period of time that I had conversations with him. First, he was a shopkeeper in Hassel Street before he shifted his business to another road in Cannon Street. But I knew him and I knew his location in the community. So I don't believe that he would ever have issued a statement just saying that he would talk to the or talk with the trade unions about the failure that was absolutely the responsibility of the Town Council administration. And I think that there is a difference between the grassroots that John MacDonald fantasizes about Tower Hamlets and a difference of the grassroots that I know and most people in Tower Hamlets know and most people in Newham know, most people in ordinary Hackney and Islington know, not the parts that are the areas where Boris Johnson or Tony Blair lived or Jeremy Corbyn lives or Emily Thornberry lives. But ordinary people are not impressed by the grassroots connections pretended as its own by the Labour Party, and it was most stunningly exposed as a sham pretension in the 2019 general election, which was given to the Tories by Jeremy Corbyn. And there was mass exodus of voters from the Labour Party to the Conservative Party. And Keir Starmer has not even shown the beginning of his understanding why it happened. What he has displayed as why it happened is absolutely not the case. And Jeremy Corbyn's actions in the last 3 weeks, repairing the damage he did in office, is a beginning. But Jeremy Corbyn has to get himself detached from the pockets of the likes of Len McCluskey and other barons of the trade union bureaucracy, which is absolutely corrupt, anti-democratic, and it's a bad influence against society. And I think that all of these bad things are being reflected and carried and contaminated by the holders of Labour Party card-carrying councillors or members of parliament, or in the case of Unmesh Desai, who covers Tower Hamlets in the cover-up that he does in the Greater London Assembly or the London Assembly as the member for these boroughs and further afield. And I think that that is where all the issues of housing, education, employment, crime, jihad, radicalization, all of these things are in one sentence placeable at the hands of the elected post holders who are not doing their job, not asking the question, not holding the executive to account. So we as a community are the losers individually, as families, and as young people. And we have the duty, not only we have the right, but we have the duty to defend our rights and our futures and our community by speaking up and collecting evidence of bad behavior, bad decisions, bad statements, bad stances taken by the elected councillors and by the elected MPs. And we shall be continuing the campaign in the ordinary way, updating the community and the viewers of what is happening in Tower Hamlets and what we are beginning as a movement to defend the community that has been let down by all these failures we have just touched on. We have not obviously given a full list of, but given a sample, representative, accurate sample of. One thing that I have to say about Crossrail, which is where I began, at the beginning, Crossrail is being delayed again, but this time the delay has been extended by the crisis, the pandemic. The funny thing is that the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has actually expressly expressed his disagreement with the most recent appointment as the boss of the Crossrail company about the delay. And he said that he disagrees. This is the first time on record that the mayor of London has expressed any disagreement with whoever is representing or speaking for the separate outfit called Crossrail, although it is under the control, under democratic banner control of the mayor of London, but it's an operationally different organization. And so, therefore, that actually is a belated admission of the veracity and the truthfulness of what the Khoodeelaar campaign has been saying right from the beginning about Crossrail. That it is not at all intended to benefit the local people like people in Tower Hamlets, but it is an extension of the agenda of big business who don't care about the communities like Tower Hamlets or Stratford and Newham and going further east. And the mayor post holder, the incumbent in post in the last 17 years have been, of course, Ken Lying Still Livingstone, also known as undone mayor, those two words we created for him on the evidence of his behavior. Ken Livingstone is a liar and he lied for Crossrail Big Business and he lied against the people of Scotland. And he is a habitual liar and a denier. He is not a socialist, he is not a revolutionary, most certainly, and he is not really enlightened. He is in the dark. Contrary to the image that he has cultivated at the expense of the community by abusing money and bribing all sorts of propagandists, Ken Livingstone is a very petty minded person. And by him being foisted on the platform promoting the idea of an elected man in Tower Hamlets, the Tower Hamlets community has been the loser overall. So we'll come back to Tower Hamlets community being loser because of the involvement of the likes of Ken Livingstone in promoting the post of executive mayor. Suffice to say that at this stage, on this update, we have not seen any evidence of Abbasuddin alias Halal or any of his unidentified publicly supporters or colleagues doing anything against the post of mayor. Although Abbas said that on a recent channel in the last week that he is against the post of mayor. And somebody commented to that program's online slot that who collected the signatures against the mayor system. We know who collected the signatures. But the point which I had made, to which that comment was supposed to be a reply, was this, that Sanumia, who is a long-standing member of the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets, an activist, and who took a very active role in the election commission petition against Lutfur Rahman, Sanumia told me on the election day, 12th of December 2019, in the Bethnal Green Road, just outside the main entrance to the Tesco store. Not far from us was loitering Rushnara Ali. On that date, she was a candidate. But Sanumia, in a brief conversation with me, told me that persons not far from or not unknown to Abbasuddin Halal had put a stop to the collection of signatures against the mayor system. And this is something that will haunt Abbasuddin for the rest of his career or even longer, because he has a duty to come across as a person of principle in the community. If he does that, then he can still begin to start the process of healing the damage that he has caused to the community, the reputation of the community, and the interest, democratic interests of the community, as evident in his failure to take to court the Private Eye magazine, which ran a story in its Rotten Boroughs page days before the 2010 mayoral election. Halal Dead Meat. Now, Halal Dead Meat was a piece that contained very interesting information about Abbasuddin. Quite apart from the bit about his tussle with Lutfur Rahman, which we shall skip now, there was this piece about an investigation that had been done by the then Housing Corporation into Tower Hamlets based Spitalfields Housing Cooperative or Housing Association. And Abbasuddin had been a long-running member of the executive, which he should not have been, but he was, thus showing that the housing cooperative was corrupted by little vested interests in Tower Hamlets, contrary to the aims of the founding campaigners, one of whom is, of course, myself. We started to campaign for the alternative forum for housing in Tower Hamlets because of the GLC's abysmal failures and all the rest, and the Tower Hamlets Council's own failures. Now, that allegation was that Abbas Uddin, in order to get re-elected to the committee of that Housing Co-op, which is now the Spitalfields Housing Association. He benefited from the votes cast in the name of a number of dead members of the cooperative or association. And Abbasuddin was asked, according to that item in Private Eye, asked 4 times whether it was him. Abbasuddin failed to deny, let alone deny convincingly. So I'm saying on the record for the community, for the sake of Abbasuddin himself, that he should clearly make a stand by behavior, by conduct, and stop being a shady operator through agents and stooges. And I'm challenging him to give a list of people, young people, whom he introduced to leadership and trained for leadership in the community. And I'm challenging him to give written chapter and verse answers to my questions to the council while he was leader. My questions and demands and questionnaires against Tower Hamlets Council colluding with the big business cross-trail agenda of digging a big hole lasting 8 to 10 years in Tower Hamlets in the center of Brick Lane. He never replied. I'm asking him to reply. He was present on Sunday, the 22nd of January 2006, at the very angry rally held at the Brady Center, where I was the main speaker. I was not billed as the main speaker because that rally was organized by Abismal himself, that is Abbasuddin, in an abysmal abuse of his position, trying to sabotage the community's campaign against cross-trade. But the momentum in support of Khoodeelaar was such that I became the focus of attention of the majority of people taking part. And the saboteurs who had organized this diversionary attempt were absolutely comprehensively defeated by the overwhelming absolute support to what I was saying. The extent of my support, or the support of the Khoodeelaar campaign that I represent, was such that one person who attended, and a prominent resident in the area now, said to me that if you had just given a hint to the people, they would have beaten up all the councillors present. I repeat, a man who is very well known now in Brick Lane area and very well known to Abbas himself said to me after the meeting on this 22nd of January 2006 that, Hokbai, if you had given just a hint, the people present would have beaten up all the Tower Hamlets councillors. My reply was that I never do that. This is not my style. My style is the advocacy and the moral and ethical and democratic organizational mobilization. I don't use people to beat up other people to gain an argument. So that's the practice that my record shows. And I'm saying to Abbas, stop hiding and stop hiding behind the Labour Party, the party and the mainstream party. This is absolute rubbish. Face the community, tell the truth to the community, and stop being so selfish. I am not after your career. I don't want to become a councillor or an MP or whatever by ditching you or pushing you one side or whatever. I could have become, I still can become any of those things if I want to. But I have other things to do, more important, which is to argue for the case and campaign. Now, stop telling me and other people that it's the party policy. This is rubbish and insulting rubbish when it is told to me. You lost the leadership, Abbas, because you refused to cooperate with the Khoodeelaar campaign. So face it and look at it. 17 years later, look at why you lost it. We held the campaign rally, the first ever Khoodeelaar campaign rally, street rally on Friday, the 22nd of October 2004, in the Greater X Street, just outside the building where the surgery that you used to run was held. And so, therefore, we actually also remember somebody from that rally calling you on the mobile and asking you to comment on our rally against the Tower Hamlets Council's role in inviting the Crossrail home. You did not support the rally. You, in fact, said negative things to the person who called you on the mobile. Just like you said negative things about Christine Shawcroft. She is no friend of mine, and as far as I know, she is a racist. She is an opportunist. But the point is that she was called a name by you because she supported Lutfur Rahman in the National Executive Committee against your submission against Lutfur Rahman. So I'm saying to you, Abbas, come back to the reality of the community and learn. When I started to read from the book New Labor, New Language, written by the professor now, Professor Emeritus in the University of Lancaster, at a rally, at a meeting held in the Tower Hamlets Council chamber. It was the Labour Party's local government committee organized meeting. Actually, the inspiration, the power behind that organization was myself. And you said, halfway through my reading of the quote or a number of quotes from the book New Labour, New Language by Norman Fairclough, you said that you were not a student there and you were not there to be lectured, in effect, by the likes of me. Now, how wrong and how corrupt and how insulting and how stupid and outrageous can you be, Abbas? You have no right to say that. You had never any right to say that you knew better than the Labour Party's policy than I did. You lost and you lost and you lost because you lied. You did not tell the truth. So stop lying and apologize for lying and apologize for conspiring against the Khoodeelaar campaign and going around and sending people, other councillors, to defame me and demonize me. Apologize and withdraw your lies and collusion. And I have no purpose in having you kind of seen persecuted or sidelined. I would support anyone who supports the community, but on the basis of honest cooperation and not two or three or four or five faces. How dare you bring Frank Dobson into Tower Hamlets to campaign for the so-called no campaign to the call for elected mayor? And weeks later, bring the same Frank Dobson to campaign for you to become the candidate for the Labour Party as mayor. What kind of idiots did you think were in the community, Abbas? Think about that. Frank Dobson, of all people, whoever he was a defeated, absolutely soundly defeated Labour Party candidate for mayor of London. And you bring him. You could not have chosen a worse advocate or role model or leader. You prevented me from speaking and you gave four persons. It's like a musical chair you created at the meeting, which was supposed to be a campaign meeting in the Brady Center. And you gave four people to chair the session for 10 minutes or 15 minutes each. What kind of idiocy is it, Abbas? And he's prevented the only person that could actually argue against having a mayor. I am that person. I was that person then, and I am the person now because of the evidence, not because it's me. I am not after my name. I warned you, Abbas, that they would win the argument and we will be defeated if we didn't get the act together in the campaign against the mayor system. Now that you have renewed the same claim that you are against the mayor system, I am asking you, Abbas, to show by really organizing, and in time, an effective campaign that actually reverses our defeat because of you, defeat in the mayor referendum in 2010. And we shall return to our Armed Council to a semblance of democracy and hopefully to a better democratic state than it has ever been. And it must be made a democratically answerable council. I hope you have understood what I've said. It is not meant personally, but I have mentioned you by name because these are the events that you were centrally involved in. So make a distinction. Never say that I have targeted you. If I had targeted you, it would be a different equation even now. You would not be able to do the things that you have been allowed to do while I have been battling the Tower Hamlets Crooks Council for its violations of my rights, and you know them, and you have not done anything to change their violating behavior. So I'm not embarrassing you by giving you chapter and verse in this broadcast, but you know what I'm talking about, and you have the duty to actually reflect on this and start the repairing process by stopping the things that you have been doing and starting to tell the truth to the community, to yourself, to me, and other people who are doing nothing but the best that we can do to keep our community in dignified situation with integrity and with its reputation intact. Many people have broken and damaged the reputation, and you know some of them, but you have not stopped working with them. In fact, you have gone back to them. You have resumed connection with some of the people that have actually destroyed the reputation of the community. And I'm not naming them either because my purpose is not to publicly, brazenly name and shame everyone. So have a look at the records and what you are doing. And we can still work together to unite the community, which was the call we made on the 6th of February 2010, when Ken, Livingston, Livingston, and George Galloway came to support the launch of the Yes campaign inside the Brady Center. And stop being tricky. Stop being tricky and conspiring for the spot on Channel 4 News. On that day, what did you say, Abbas, to the Channel 4 News camera? You stopped them from talking to me. How dare you? How could you even begin to think that you would say something that would match, let alone excel? You should not be doing that. You should be supporting me and other people in the community who know what they're talking about. That is the way you can benefit, not by sabotaging us in the community. We are the main workers in the community's defense. So start learning even at this stage. And let's start with the evidence that you can produce and you must produce to stop the mayor system. Shoaib has said that you have said that you are against the mayor system. And I have said to Shoaib, let him show what he's doing to stop this system, not make slogans, not say it is in my CB, I opposed it. Let's stop it. Let's do something to stop the mayor system and democratize Tower Hamlets. So this is ending this broadcast at 09:14 GMT, 10:14 UK time on Tuesday, the 21st of July 2020. We shall update, if necessary, clarify, emphasize, amplify some of the topics and add new topics as we go along in the next editions. Khuda Hafiz, Assalamu alaikum, good morning, wherever you are, whenever you are watching this. This is Muhammad Haq saying goodbye for now from the KhoodeelaarTV channel, recorded in East London, England, UK.